Welcome to the Blabbermalt Show with your hosts, Dave and Matthias, two guys that blabber incessantly about beer, brewing, and bullcrap. Stick around while they brew up another tasty episode.
Yeah. Scream for me, Cleveland. Scream for me, Cleveland. That's just a little prelude for the music section coming up later. It's an Iron Maiden thing. If you know, you know. So here we are, Blabbermalt, and you're going to notice that this is not Matthias. He is at an undisclosed location, enjoying some family time, spring break with his family. So my friend here, Todd Donnelly, is going to help me hold down the fort today. Legendary brewer in the area, fellow snob, fellow Iron Maiden fan,
yes,
fellow pharmacist, fellow UT grad, too.
Yes.
Yeah, so we got a lot in common. Play the thing, Sean.
It's time to mash in.
Yeah, so how was your week? What'd you do this weekend? What was going on for Easter?
So this was the first weekend of decent weather, so spent a lot of time kind of unwinterizing everything.
Okay.
And then had a good time with family on Sunday.
Nice.
Had a nice meal, nice visit.
Yeah.
So other than that, it was well-earned relaxation.
Yeah, that's great. We did similar. We were out ABC Friday night with the wife. My nephew was in with his girlfriend and sister-in-law were out. We had a good time. We tried the new Paloma at ABC. My wife came up with the idea, hey, why don't you salt that rim for me?
Cool.
And it was great. So I think they're going to offer that as a thing. They're going to put salt on the rim for the Palomas out there. And then, had a good Easter, went out to dinner with some friends, brunch, and then spent some time with the family over at my brother's house. So,
Cool.
yeah, that's what we did. So before we get started, I want you to make sure you like and follow, subscribe, hit the notification bell on all the socials, hit the buttons, do the things, because it really helps us out. Last Tuesday, we were at Collision Bend for the release of my collaboration brew with them, the Grate and Grind Saison. We did a short little version of the podcast out there. Took us about 3 times to do it. So I told myself I'm not going to make fun of Sean anymore for any audio difficulties because we had some problems. It's not as easy as it seems. So, hey, if you're thinking about doing a podcast, why don't you hit up Audio Bay, and they have all the equipment. They have all the lights and the mics and the headphones and the equipment. And do a podcast. You can concentrate on your content, and they'll take care of all the switching of the buttons and all that stuff. So, yeah, shout out to Audio Bay. All right, let's hit the Vorloft here.
It's time for the Vorloft.
So I already introduced Todd, and as I said, he's a fellow brewer and a brewer with some significant acumen in beer, cider, meads. Why don't you tell us, how did you get started into brewing? What was your gateway into the hobby?
So I came into this a little different route than most.
Mm-hmm.
Built a home kegerator, had a one-tap kegerator, wanted to have friends over, wanted to have beer.
Okay.
The problem was, the first time you go to buy beer, you buy it in a half barrel. So it took me like 6 months to drink through that first keg of Molson Golden. I have not had a drop since. You just get so tired of stuff.
Yeah.
So then I built a little 2-tap kegerator and started buying sixtels from local places, and then said, well, 2 is great. Wouldn't 10 be better?
Absolutely.
So then I built a 10-tap kegerator, and I figured out I need to start home brewing to cost justify this hobby because buying commercial beer is expensive.
Yeah. What? Forgive me.
Go ahead.
We need to pour a beer.
Yes, we do.
Beer of the day. I told you we're getting the Fatheads Green Grunge. Green Grunge. It smells like Green Spirit. A Nirvana
Cool.
themed beer.
So I started homebrewing in 2008. My wife and I had played around with it a little bit, maybe 10 years before, didn't make a very good beer. Decided I was going to get serious, so I joined Snobs. I joined Little Mountain Homebrewers Club, started listening to the Brewing Network, and just totally fell in love with the hobby.
Yep.
Probably like, you as a pharmacist, your background, your science training, your knowledge is just perfectly set up for home brewing. The science, the microbiology, the chemistry, it's a blast, and you get to drink your mistakes.
Yes.
So
it's not all bad.
started doing that, and then once I got into competitions, then it just took off. Everything I like to do, I like to compete in, like to see how I am against others. And once you start winning, competitions and doing well and getting good feedback,
Right.
That was that. So that's been the last 13, 14 years now.
And now you're on the other end. You're able to give new home brewers that feedback that you got when you started out, I imagine.
Yeah, judging is a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
It's not an easy road. I'll say, getting through the ranks and taking the exams and studying to get where you want to be. It's a lot more than just drinking beer.
Right. Yeah.
And it's fun to try to explain to people like how much work you have to do to train your skills and to get the knowledge necessary to take those exams. But
Yeah.
now we get to turn drinking beer into a hobby, and then the hobby becomes something that you give back.
Right.
It's a good process.
Yeah. Here,
Cheers.
let's- Cheers.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Matt does not make a bad beer.
No. So, yeah, we talked a little bit about the BJCP program on the last episode. And I was explaining it's not like an Untapped rating where it's like, I like that beer, that's a 5.
Right.
You have to, it could be a beer that's great in its category and its lane, but if it's not your style, you still have to judge it according to
Right.
the set profile for that beer. And then you are you a national judge or national judge? That's a big deal. That's a big deal. So you start out with the online program, and then you sit for a proctored exam, and then you get experience.
Yeah, so the basic process, again, you have a 100-question, 60-minute, or it's a timed exam, and you've got to know your stuff to get through that initial four-way. You can't be looking up answers as you go. That allows you to sit for the tasting exam where it's 6 beers, 90 minutes, you do a score sheet, and they're coming fast and furious. And judging a beer, I don't know if you've covered this with your audience before, but it's a 50-point scale, and it's broken down into the aroma, the appearance, the mouthfeel, the flavor, and the overall impression. And each one of those has a certain number of points. And you're just basically using all of your sensory skills at once to assess, what am I sensing here? You have no idea how that brewer made that beer, and you can't make those assumptions, and you're judging it against what is the archetype for that style. So
Correct.
It's supposed to taste like this. Let's compare the beer that you're tasting. If you do well enough on that exam, you get dropped into one of a couple of different levels. You can become a recognized judge or a certified judge. If you score above 80 on that exam, you can sit for the national exam, which is a 90-minute written exam. And the questions in advance. It's still one of the most stressful exams I've ever taken, and I've taken a lot.
Right.
And again, if you score well enough on that, 80 or higher, you get national. If your tasting exam and your written exam average is 90 or higher, you can become a master.
Yeah.
And like less than 2% of all judges get to that level. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting little ladder to work your way up.
Yeah. So when you're, people think, well, I'm studying for this beer exam. Oh, that's real rough. But actually, you have to know the different off flavors, and you have to be able to detect them in fairly low levels. Isn't that correct?
And we all have different palates.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, they can sense a certain off flavor from across the room, whether it exists or not. They can taste it. Some people are completely blind, and you can have a beer that's just rife with diacetyl or oxidation, and they might not pick it up, to the same level that somebody else does. So it's learning what you can do and then learning your blind spots.
Yeah.
And then going into a beer saying, I kind of have this as my skill set. What am I going to pick up in this beer?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And then you've been running the Son of Brazila competition for quite a few years.
So we started that competition in, I think, 2010.
Okay.
And It's called Son of Brewzilla because at the time, for Cleveland Beer Week, Brewzilla was the big capstone event on Saturday night.
Correct.
So the first year, we ran the contest that morning, and then we were going to announce the awards on stage at Brewzilla, which was the big beer festival at the end of it. And what we figured out was that's a lot of work to do in one day.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where the son of kind of came from. So that happened maybe the first year, second year, and that was Dave Clark's idea at the time. How do we bring snobs into Beer Week? And it worked out great. We had to figure out how to decouple it just so we could do more things and not have it be smack dab in the middle of, you know, all the fun that you're having during Beer Week.
Right.
But yeah, it's evolved, it's grown. We started it in the second floor of the North Olmsted Fatheads facility.
Mm-hmm.
Having to go up and down stairs and you know haul everything up was not a lot of fun. But we followed Matt Cole and the rest of the Fatheads group. The next few years, it was in their first production facility over by the airport, and then we followed them, you know, to their new facility. And that group just provides an amazing amount of support, world-class space for us to do it in.
Yeah, and they used to let us do when they were still there, the Big Brew,
Yep.
Big Brew home brew event, which is coming up, I think. So the Son of Brewzilla is a sanctioned BJCP event. What is the process for becoming a sanctioned event?
So you have to apply. You have to let the BJCP know what you're doing, when it is, you know, what your basic estimated numbers are. And if it fits on the calendar, you know, they'll put it out there and say, okay, this is now a BJCP sanctioned event, which means we have to follow certain rules. But if it's a sanctioned event, that means the judges get points.
Yes.
And that's the incentive for judges is, you know, there's a passing of the test part, but then there's also, you have to keep active in the hobby and you have to judge or you have to steward or you have to do something frequently enough to achieve points. And that helps you get to the next level too.
Right.
So once it's sanctioned, we put out the call for judges and say, this is the date we're having it. And, you know, this year it's going to be the weekend of November 11th. And judges and volunteers make the event. Because
without them, it doesn't happen.
There's three of us that kind of organize it. It's Mike Untolchik, Greg Irving, and I. We have some other friends, you know, in Snobs, Jim Jedwisiak, Jim Gress, who have helped us with sponsorships. But, you know, there's a judge coordinator, the event coordinator, the data management, and cellar mastering. Those are the kind of roles. But, you know, you need people to show up to help steward, to help pull the beers from the cellar, to help, you know, do the scoring, to help judge the beers. And everyone's a volunteer, and we're all doing it out of the love of the hobby, and you get to drink beer.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing at all.
Terrible way to spend a weekend.
Now, is it difficult to get enough judges and stewards? And
that tends to be the rate limiting step for how big your competition can be. Because you're going to draw from, you know, here in Cleveland, we draw Cleveland, Akron. We bring judges in from Pittsburgh, some from Indianapolis, some from New York. I mean, there are folks who do a lot of traveling with judging beer. But, you know, again, people have other lives, other schedules. And it's tough to say we're going to do 400 entries. And we know that we need to have, you know, say 60 judges or 70 judges to do that many. And then you only get half or two-thirds of that, you know, who sign up or show up. And now you've got to start figuring out, do we run multiple days? How much do we want to work our judges to get these events done?
I know you were going to steward, but you're judging now.
That happens a lot. Yeah. Or, hey, you know what, you're going to do another flight. And then, you know, we're going to do this again tomorrow, and you're going to do another flight then, too. Yeah. So they run the gamut.
Yeah. Do you have, I mean, it's got to be a balancing act. Okay, we want how many participants? You open the sign up if you don't get enough or you get too many and you have to close it down early. How is that balancing act? Is that difficult?
When we I would say the first 7 or 8 years of the event, we would sell out or, you know, fill up within 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
One of the nice things about our contest is our sister club in Akron, which is Saz. They also have a competition, Wizard of Saz. And we created a friendly competition between the two clubs. And we have a big trophy, and whichever club scores the most points gets to keep the trophy for the year, and it's bragging rights.
Who is it right now? I forget.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah.
But we won't talk about that.
Okay.
So those first couple of years, it was a mad dash to get as many of your club members to enter their beers,
right,
so that you had a fighting chance to get it. And then we started getting, you know, people from out of state. We're getting entries from all over the country. But we figured out that, yeah, we could post and probably fill 600, or more. But honestly, we can't get the manpower to do much more than 400. So we've kind of settled on the 3 to 350 range.
Yeah.
It's manageable. You can do it in 2 sessions on a Saturday, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, that makes sense. What does the Wizard of Saws get? Are they about the same size competition?
Roughly, yeah. In the 250 to 350 is kind of the sweet spot for local comps.
Yeah, well, I know you bring in a lot of points for the snobs with your excellent
I try.
ciders and meads.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Sure.
You're brewing beer, getting some good feedback. Competitions are going good. How did you get into? I mean, what was it first? Ciders or meads? And
So I was doing just beer from 2008 to 2013.
okay.
And having a blast, doing quite well. Enjoyed certain styles more than others. Follows kind of like what I like to brew and drink. In 2013, though, I started grad school,
Okay. Yeah.
and I was doing a double master's program, and I did not have 8 hours on a weekend for a brew day.
Yeah.
But you can do cider, or you can do mead. The prep time you can basically do at halftime of a football game. So it was a great way for me to continue with the hobby with my time constraints. And, I love cider and, I love mead. So for me, it was take that first step in, and it was cider, because again, cider's a little easier. Mead took a little bit of time and practice.
Okay.
And fortunately, there are a lot of really good, mead makers in the area. Carl McMillan from Saws and I, had friendly competition for the next, 6-7 years until he eventually went pro. But, iron sharpens iron. So, going up against Carl made me better. And I think I pushed him, to enter better entries too. And we had a blast.
Yeah.
And then, started sending away things to the national competition. So
Right.
National Homebrewers Competition, the Mazer Cup, which is the Super Bowl of mead.
Yeah.
And that kind of gave me that next point, this is what I want to do. These are the people that I want to compete against, and I want to see how I do.
How far you can push it.
At that upper level. And that's kept me interested in the hobby.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Because, you make a lot of liquid, you can't drink it all yourself.
Yeah.
You can only share so much with friends, and eventually you need that outlet. So for me, it was, okay, I'll send this off to be evaluated and compete other places.
Yeah. Are you doing 5-gallon batches or?
So I've got
smaller?
a 10-gallon brew house. So when I do beer, it's 10 gallons.
Yeah.
And I've got 14-gallon conical fermenters. So I tend to do 10-gallon batches.
Yeah.
And that gives you 2 kegs worth. And the goal is, if you wanted to have a really good 3-year-old mead today, you needed to make it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I figured out, let's start mass producing. So I'm buying in bulk. I'm buying 60-gallon or 60-pound pails of honey, making a lot of mead and bulk aging it.
Okay.
So, what you're going to have here tonight is stuff that I basically took right out of the kegs.
Okay.
When I bottle for competition, I will, taste what's in the keg, and then I'll start doctoring it up literally for that competition.
Okay.
So I don't modify what's in the keg. I'm just letting it naturally mature. The flavors will change over time. So if you set something today, either your acid or your tannin, that might not be what you wanted to have that taste like in a year.
Okay.
So there's some strategy to how to run your cellar, but I've got a lot of kegs just taking up a lot of space. Ask my wife, but they're aging, they're getting better, they're maturing, and
part of
it's
the
a
process.
never-ending process. Yeah.
Let me back you up to the brew day. I mean, I know when we're mashing with grain and you get your wort, it's kind of the perfect environment for yeast.
Mm-hmm.
For cider and mead, you kind of have to take care of it a little bit different. Is that the case? I'm naive when it comes to cider and mead. So
no problem. So cider is a lot easier. It has a lot of, obviously, fruit in it, which is a fairly easy substrate for yeast to metabolize.
Okay.
You can put a touch of yeast nutrient in it, but for the most part, you pitch your yeast, it's going to work through the cider. It's going to ferment in a matter of days.
Okay.
It's very quick. Honey is a completely different animal. There is very little free amino nitrogen in the must, basically the diluted honey. So you have to provide nutrients.
Okay.
So, a brew day for cider is, you pour your cider into your fermenter, whatever else you're going to make, your fruit additions, anything else, and then you pitch your yeast and you walk away. Mead, it's, you dilute the honey, you put whatever you want in it. If you're making a fruit mead, if you're making a spiced mead, and then your journey is just beginning. So you use stagger nutrients. So typically it's at 48 hours, you add a certain amount of yeast energizer. So I use Fermade O. You can use Fermade K. There's DAP. There's other ingredients you can put in, but you need to feed it nitrogen. And then you do it again on day 2 and day 3 and then day 7. So what you're trying to do is feed the yeast what it needs in small enough bites so that the ferment doesn't go out of control. You don't throw off a bunch of fusels. You don't throw off a bunch of off flavors. The heat of the fermentation doesn't take over and provide its own off flavors that you wouldn't want. It's similar to beer. You want to keep your ferment temperature under control. But you don't want to dump it all in at one time and let the yeast go crazy. You want to stagger those additions so that it's a nice, slow, easy, controllable ferment.
Okay.
Primarily, you're done 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Primary fermentation's over. Your yeast is starting to flocculate. At that point, I'll usually cold crash, drop in sparkaloid, or you can use any kind of fining agent, and then rack it off into a second vessel, usually a keg at that point.
And you control fermentation temperatures?
You can. Room temperature is fine.
Okay.
Much like beer, anywhere from 62 to 72 is going to be your sweet spot.
Okay.
Different yeasts like to work at different temperatures, but for the most part, it's a lot more forgiving. You don't want it in your garage when it's 90 degrees outside.
Yeah, for sure.
Letting that yeast go crazy. You're going to get the fusel alcohols. But for the longest time, that's why people thought making mead was so much harder, and you needed to age your mead for so long because they were just pitching yeast into this inhospitable environment, and the yeast struggled, for 6 months to chew through all that sugar, and it kicked off all sorts of nasty byproducts, weird flavors that you had to age out for a year or two.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, as the hobby and the commercialization of making mead became more popular, people started discovering that, hey, this is the way to do it. And there's been 4 or 5 guys that have really kind of spearheaded that and have created what the rest of us all copy now. But it's that, tailored, staggered nutrient addition process. And you can drink very good mead at 6 weeks instead of 6 months.
Yeah.
Now, it's better at 6 months, but you know what you have a lot sooner in the process, and you can turn your batches a lot quicker.
Okay.
So you're not hogging up a fermenter for 6 months. You're using a fermenter for a month.
Yeah. Do you put any in wood, or is that a thing that...
Mead loves oak.
Okay.
So I do have a 5-gallon oak barrel. It's an old whiskey barrel that I recharge from time to time, but oak staves, oak spirals, oak chips, oak cubes, they all work. A little bit gives a little bit of that vanillin flavor, a little bit of mouthfeel from the tannin that you're introducing. That's really what you're looking for is structure. It's like a wine. You're trying to give it a little more complexity so it's not just sweet and sitting on your tongue.
Yeah.
So the acid, the tannin balance is the difference between a lackluster mead and but a joy in a glass.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm gonna grab this glass, and I'm
So we
hoping
need
maybe
to-
will fill it up for me.
Awesome. So I brought a couple things tonight. We're going to do tastes of 3 different ciders. I've got a sizer and then 2 meads.
Okay.
So a sizer is a mead made with apple juice instead of water. So it kind of, branches the two together. So the first one we're going to do, we're going to go a little out of order. I've got a New England cider,
Okay.
which this one's 13% ABV.
Ooh. Maybe
And-
don't fill it up then.
No, we're just going to do tastes. Yeah, we're going to have a good time. So I like doing New England ciders. They're delicious to drink in the fall. The original concept here is that you are taking your cider and you're adding in any one of a number of different dark sugars. So I used turbinado, Demerara, some amber Belgian candy sugar.
Oh, wow.
Get the the gravity up, so you're getting that alcohol, and then little oak aging, and then I aged it on some roasted raisins to give it a little bit of that vinous quality on the back end. Cheers.
Cheers.
So you'll notice definitely it's got more body. The alcohol is there, but it's not overly warm. This one's off dry, semi-sweet.
Yeah, that's got a nice mouthfeel. Get those raisins.
Yep, and it finishes it doesn't cloy.
It's not hot
Again,
at all.
13%.
Yeah.
It's not hot. It hits the tongue. You get all the impression. You can taste the sugar, but it's not sweet.
Yeah.
And again, this one's great. Nice, cool fall night or
Yeah.
winter night with your feet up and you got a fire going.
Yeah, that's dangerous because it is not. It does not taste like 13%.
No, it'll sneak up on you. So
Oh, yeah.
most people, when
Thank
they
you.
think cider, they think, Angry Orchard,
Right.
or they
right.
think it's an apple wine cooler. And that's what, the commercial guys sell. So that's what they make. And, you go to a cider competition and man, there's all sorts of interesting things. Just in the traditional ciders, you've got New World, which is basically apples from, the Americas. You've got a French cider. You've got an English cider. You can do a Spanish cider. And again, it's where did the apples come from? Well, we can't really grow the apple trees here that they have in England.
Yeah.
They're much more tart, much more tannic, much more acidic. Same with France. So most of the ciders we make are either fruit additions or they're spice additions. And I've got one of each. I've got a raspberry and a ginger that we can try next.
Okay.
And then it's whatever your imagination can take. So I've done back sweetened with maple syrup, and call it like a maple dessert cider.
Yeah.
People use herbs. They use different spices, combinations of all the above. It's good.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
All right, so we'll move on to the ginger next. And I picked that one because it's going to clean the palate.
Down the hatch.
Yep.
So, have you ever thought of going pro?
That's a great question, and
The answer is yes.
but I think I can answer it in a couple of other ways. I don't want a hobby to be a job.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, for us as pharmacists, we have a career that allows us to make a good living. It would be tough to turn that down, to start a struggling, little small cider or meadery.
And
This might be my retirement job.
yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But for now, I really enjoy it just as a hobby. So this is ginger cider, 5%, semi-sweet, just a touch of the spicy ginger and mostly medium spicy ginger.
Okay.
So again, the
Thank
concept here is, hits the palate, cleanses it, gives you that little taste of ginger without being too much.
Yeah, it smells wonderful.
So this one's always on my kegerator. Just love the flavor. It's a great
Yeah,
one to
the
have. in
ginger really
between.
brightens it up. It's really bright. Yeah, that's good.
And I don't care for ginger in beer. So I actually thought I didn't like ginger.
Yeah.
Turns out I really like it in cider and I really like it in mead.
Okay.
So it's just what are your flavors playing off of
Yeah.
in the rest of the glass?
Yeah, it is a lighter body. Yeah, that's nice.
And then most ciders, if you let it ferment regularly, it will ferment down to zero. Like there will be no residual sugar. It loves to go dry. You can back sweeten as much as you want, or you can make something sweet on the front end just by overwhelming the yeast.
And then you halt fermentation so it doesn't.
You can.
Burn through that.
It's harder to do with cider because cider itself typically comes in at 1055, 1060. So the yeast is going to chew through those gravity points in no time flat. It's easier to stabilize it, back sweeten it with. You can use honey, you can use sugar, you can use agave, you can use whatever you want to what you like.
Okay.
So in this one, when I made it, I used 3 cans of raspberry puree, which has a nice tart acidity of its own, but it was bone dry, and I didn't really care for it. I back sweetened it a little bit and liked it.
Oh, yeah.
So I back sweetened it a little bit more, and this is actually a pretty popular version because for me, I don't usually make sweet ciders, and this one's a little on the sweeter side, but I think the raspberry plays very well with that
Okay.
dimension. So take a taste and let me know what you think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I do a lot with like blackberries and raspberries and saisons, and sometimes raspberry loses something when you take the sweetness away. But you gave it back with this.
That
Yeah.
was the trial and error,
Yeah.
and I think it worked out. Yeah, this one's a good one. I don't know that I'd have 2 pints of this after mowing the lawn on a hot day,
No,
but it's certainly tasty to drink all the other times.
So do you back sweeten it after it's in the keg, or is it still when you're back sweetening?
So I will usually let it finish fermentation, rack it off the yeast, stabilize it with your potassium metabisulfate, your potassium sorbate. You just want to stun the yeast. You want them to stop actively fermenting or replicating. Then when you add your back sweetening, you're not going to create, additional fermentation, which if you're bottling, you don't want to create a bottle bomb.
No.
But, in a keg, you can force carb it. That's the easy part. But you just don't want the yeast to continue to chew through that sugar.
Right.
And if left on their own, they will do that over time. So you think you made a nice sweet cider, you come back 2 weeks later and it doesn't taste as sweet because it's not.
Because it's, and you might have some shrapnel in your storage area.
All right, so those were the ciders. You want to try working through the meads?
I do.
Okay. For those of you at home, wish you could taste these.
Yeah. Sucks to be you guys.
So again, a sizer is a mead. Yeah, you want to try some? Sizer is a mead that you used apple juice to reconstitute the honey. And in this case, I used African wildflower honey, so Zambian wildflower, which is a deep, dark, earthy, almost musty kind of big honey. So just putting it in, with the cider, it still carries some of that flavor. I've done, different versions of this as just a straight mead, and it's delicious. As a sizer, I think it's really complex. Yep.
Yeah, I can smell it.
So this one's coming in around 10%. This is semi-sweet. But you get that initial, you definitely taste the apples. There's a little bit of acidity that's coming from the honey. And then there's the finish where it just kind of fades away and you get that, dark, earthy kind of impression from the honey. And I think these two, play pretty well together. And sizers can be, any combination of just a straight apple and honey mix. You can put cinnamon, you can put, Christmas spices. You can do, a popular version is called an apple butter sizer. They can be sweet, they can be dry. It's all up to just what you want to make.
Yeah, and you say this semi-sweet.
Semi-sweet.
Yeah, it's not cloying at all. It's very good.
So with meads, anything 10-10 or 10-12 or lower is considered dry.
Okay.
10-10 to roughly 10-25 is semi-sweet, and anything that finishes 10-25 or up is considered sweet.
Okay.
You can get into a dessert category, which is 10-40 and above, and those are pretty chewy, but they're good.
Yeah.
I tend to stay away from dry. I just don't find them to be particularly to my palate. I like sweet, but semi-sweet to me kind of covers the most ground.
Right.
You could have something 10-15 to 10-20, and it's just a, no pun intended, but sweet spot, for that to finish off.
Rim shot there.
All right. So the next one.
Yeah, that's good.
This is mesquite. So mesquite blossom honey from Mexico. This one's a 2018. And I actually made this one during a power outage that we had during Hurricane Florence.
Okay.
So I just always call this Hurricane Florence mead. So mesquite is a nutty, interesting flavor that a lot of folks have never had before. When you think mesquite, you think smoky, but this is, again, from the blossom. So this is what does the flower taste like? Lightly oaked. This one finished right at the border of semi-sweet to sweet. But again, this came right out of the keg. I did not doctor this with acid or tannin at all. But in the nose, you can definitely get some of the alcohol sweetness. You're getting some of the residual honey sweetness.
Yeah, I can smell that honey.
And then there's that little nutty, almost almond-like character that'll come across in the taste as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
It tastes like a blossom.
Sure.
Beautiful. Where do you find these honeys?
So you can go to your local farm stand and you can get wildflower honey from pretty much anywhere. And wildflower is defined as we don't know where the bees went, but they went lots of different places. To get a varietal, those bees needed to hang out in an orchard that was specific to that. So was it clover? Was it tupelo? Was it meadow foam? Was it mesquite? Anything. There's probably 50 different types of honey. I started buying it in bulk. So I'm buying 60-pound pails from Dutch Gold, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And that, a 60-pound pail will let you have a lot of fun. You can make probably 4 to 6, kegs, depending on how much alcohol you want to put into that. And then you can start blending. To buy, at the local farm stand, you're probably going to spend $7-8, for a pound of honey.
Ooh.
And if you're going to make a 5-gallon batch, you're looking at, up to 15 pounds of honey.
Yeah.
Back, before COVID, you could buy bulk and spend in the, $2 to $2.50 range per pound.
Okay.
So, definitely created a cost savings there. I was making batches of mead for about the same cost as a batch of beer.
Yeah.
Now, since COVID, things aren't as available as they were because nothing crossed the border for a while. So you haven't sniffed mesquite honey, in the States in 2 years.
Yeah. This is probably a dumb question. Do you treat your water at all?
So I have well water where I'm from, and chemically it's spot on for what I want to do.
Okay.
The ions are where they need to be. Basically, if your water tastes good to you, doesn't have chlorine or chloramines in it, it's going to make good mead.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Simple enough.
All right. And then we're going to finish up. This is a 2019 Piment. So this is clover honey, Chardonnay grape juice, fermented together. And a Piment is any mead that is made with grape juice. So there are all sorts of different ways to describe different styles. For instance, if you make it with rose hips, it's a hippocras. If you make it with something else, it has another name. Like there's probably 30 different subcategories of the different spiced meads. Piments tend to be not exactly wine-like because the honey is going to definitely still be the primary flavor contributor. But Chardonnay versus a Cabernet versus a Sauvignon Blanc, you want to match those with the honeys. So orange blossom honey, which has a natural acidity, with a Sauvignon Blanc grape juice, which has a natural acidity, or a Riesling, those go together great.
Okay.
And you can pair with, a Cabernet and have a nice dry red wine, kind of flavor and impression. Wow. And you can play with everything in between. You can make them dry, you make them sweet. You want a little more? Okay.
Do you ever find a keg and you're like, I forgot I made this in the back?
More often than you'd think.
Yeah.
I've had a couple ciders, I've had a couple meads and some sizers where you make it and you taste it and you're like, well, that isn't exactly what I had in mind.
Yeah.
Either it went too far in one direction or it just didn't fit your mental picture of what that was going to be like. And I've learned to just put it aside, put it in the corner, ignore it for the next 2 to 3 years,
so
and come back to it.
A lot of kegs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got, I think is last counting, 110 kegs.
Oh my God.
And I've got about...
These are cornies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got about 80 of them filled with liquid.
Oh my God.
So, again, bulk aging is your friend.
I have like 10 of them, and I thought I had a lot. Oh, there it is.
But again, you get the sweetness from the honey, but you can definitely tell the tartness and the character that comes from the grape.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly on the finish.
That is really nice. Wow. That's amazing.
Cheers.
Cheers, man. I really appreciate you bringing all these.
Sure.
This really opened my eyes to ciders and meads.
Well, you said last night, hey, why don't you bring some? So, before dinner I ran out.
That's really the whole reason for this podcast is to have people bring us stuff to drink.
And you know what? It doesn't take much to twist my arm to say, share your stuff and talk about it.
Yeah.
Just ask my wife. I never shut up about about my hobby or what I've made lately.
So I also heard that you make your own gin. Is this true?
Allegedly.
Allegedly?
Allegedly, there
I
may
mean,
be.
Yeah, okay.
It may have happened.
Okay. Bourbons?
Not done bourbons yet. The lesser complex things are the fun ones to kind of get started with.
Okay.
But if you like gin, it's just based on the recipe of how many herbs and different botanicals you want to put into it.
Right.
And do you want something that tastes like Bombay Sapphire? Do you want something that tastes like Hendrix? The recipes are kind of out there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of figuring out how much do you want in each. I tend to like a more citrus forward, a little less reliant on just, a juniper bomb.
Right.
So, orange peels, lemon peels, grapefruit peels, tangerines, whatever you want to put into it, you can do that. And then there's, 7 or 8 other things that kind of find themselves in every gin.
My wife is allergic to juniper a little bit, I think. Like Christmas trees give her fits. And so we're looking for a gin because we like gin, but, can't drink a lot of it, start sneezing,
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, it's not good. So
you don't want to have an EpiPen with your evening cocktail.
Yeah, and who wants a vodka martini anyway? Really?
No, that's for cleaning surfaces. Liquor should either be brown or have juniper in it.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get into the boil, Sean.
It's time for the
So, homebrew happenings. You have anything on your drawing board that you're brewing up coming up?
So the nationals are going on right now.
Yes.
So we submitted all of our entries back in mid-March. The first round judging for Indianapolis was 3 weeks ago. We won't know how we did until the first weekend in May. And then the second round is in June. And this year it's going to be in San Diego.
Yeah. Are
So
you going?
I'm not. I went last year, judged last year in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
obviously
that was a good time.
You were there as well.
Yeah.
So much closer. This year it just didn't work out on the schedule,
Yeah,
but
it's a
wish I
expensive
could.
flight.
Yeah, and I didn't have the time to give up. I had some other things going on this year, so
Yeah.
I'll miss it, but I'll be back next year.
Yeah, I have. I brought this Mexican lager. I don't know if we want to try that.
Sure.
But my wife is a big fan of the tahini spice, which I just became aware of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we put it on popcorn. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea. See, that's why I like having smart people on. I think of these things, But I was going to do. I want to put that in a beer. I was thinking of American wheat, but I'm thinking maybe with the acidity of that spice, might do a Gosa or something.
Sure.
Put that spice in there. I don't know, just something I'm kicking around.
And it'd probably play well with the lime too. So.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It seems like everybody on the planet knows what it is except me, but it's kind of chili pepper, lime flavored, acidic, citric acid kind of spice, whatever.
Yeah, let me know when you make that. I want to try some.
Yeah, I'm going to make that. We talked about the big brew day. May 6th, the snobs are, is that terrestrial this year?
Yeah.
Making the wort.
They've been very supportive of the club the last several years.
Yeah.
They make the wort. You show up, you fill your carboy,
Mm-hmm.
take it home. They typically do, it's just a general pale ale, lightly hopped type wort, and then you get creative with it from there.
Finish it however you want.
Yep.
And it's great because the wort making process is the time consuming process of the brew day, and you don't have to clean out the mash tun. We're always talking about, scrubbing out the mash tun. So, probably all you have to do is get a sanitized vessel. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
And they'll fill it with wort.
And then we have a meeting typically a month and a half or so later with snobs that everybody brings,
What they made.
and you compare. And it's amazing that you can get 16 different styles of beer out of what was, a relatively base pedestrian, initial wort.
Yeah.
Guys take it home and they reboil it, or they'll add extra fermentables. They'll do a souring. They'll do a fruit. They'll do, all sorts of fun stuff that us homebrewers tend to do. And then it's fun just to test them and see which one you like best.
Yeah, for sure. In pro brew happenings around the area, Millersburg Brewing is celebrating their 10th anniversary. On Saturday, May 6th, they're going to have some food specials and a couple special beer releases. So, get down to Millersburg. That brewery is I'm a consultant pharmacist, so I go out to these nursing homes, and I have one down in Walnut Creek. So Millersburg is just down the street. So
Excellent.
it's fun to go out there and see what they're brewing. It when I'm
Stopped
down
in there last year. My wife and I went to Columbus, celebrated our anniversary. We stayed at Brewdog at the hotel.
Yeah.
So we hit breweries on the way down to Columbus, and then hit breweries on the way home. And one of the two stops, the first one was Millersburg.
Yeah.
Great beer. Took a bunch home. Really a cool little spot. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. And then we hit Paradigm Shift in Massillon. Mike's a great home brewer who's gone pro and just absolutely killed it. So Mike Malinowski, fantastic stuff.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to touch on ABC since Matthias isn't here, but they got number 2 in the Northeast Ohio Craft Brewers News for the best food in-house option. So that's pretty cool. Uniontown in Ashland was number 1. I have never been there, but yeah, so they apparently have good food too.
All right.
They also had the poll for outdoor patios, and ABC was number 4 in that, which is pretty impressive. Number 1, Sandy Springs in Minerva, Birdfish in Columbiana. Number 2, number 3, Missing Mountain. That's pretty cool. Cuyahoga Falls.
Yeah.
And then Ignite was number 5, right behind ABC.
I mean, come on. ABC's got a creek running through the back going right next to the patio. That's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, that's nice. They've lost a couple feet through erosion. So the river or the creek is even closer. So it's even better.
Yeah. Have a little water with your beer.
Yeah. So locally, we wanted to talk about what's happening in beer events. The Medina Beer Fest, Saturday, April 23rd. We talked about this last big show. They got 25 breweries. There's 3 tiers of entry. They have food trucks, so a bunch of food, and you get a free donut. I mean, come on.
A donut.
I mean, good. I'm in. Free donut, I'm in. So, Snobs Night Out is, how many times can I mention this? April 19th, which is next Wednesday.
Do it as many times as you want.
Yeah, come down and get a pint of my size on. I'm going to pimp that as many times as I can. Beer releases. Fatheads, the Klein and Crispy German Pils style ale is coming out, and that is even more recent than the Green Grunge, which is very good, by the way. Take another little sip.
Yeah, let's say pass that can over here. Thank you.
At the Fatheads North Olmsted, they have a beer called Constant Tardiness Boysenberry Sour Ale, and it's on tap only in the saloon. That's not going to be in cans or anywhere else. Saucy Brew Works, Don't Stop With It Tangerine White Ale. I always like saucy beers. They're good.
Yep.
They're going to have that on tap at the brewery, and they're going to have 12-ounce cans, 6-packs. Noble Beast did a collaboration with Wolf's Ridge in Columbus, and that is a Mexican dark lager. Adjunct with Oaxacan, Oaxacan corn. It's a green corn, so that's pretty cool. Like an adjunct lager, that'd be pretty good. Put some tahini spice on that. Noble Beast, just said that. Schnitz Ale Brewery in Akron, Danks for the Mammaries. Get it? Mammaries. It was a Pink Boots.
Excellent.
They're donating some of those proceeds to the Pink Boots Society. Medina Brewing, since Matthias isn't here, they have in their Survivor Series, they have the Idaho 7 and Cascade IPA. It's a cold IPA. So I'm going to try to see if we can get Matthias to bring some in for next week's or the following week's big episode. Collision Bend. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I did a collaboration with them. We have the Grate and Grind Saison, and it's on. You didn't know that?
No, I did not know.
Okay, well,
awesome. What
they are.
So how did you get to do that? What's the story?
That was. I'm glad you asked.
Yes.
The Lorraine Waterfront Brewfest has a contest every. It's in August every year, and I just entered it Need another beer? Oh, okay. Okay. So, yeah, and for winning that, you get to brew at Collision Bend. So
Awesome.
I brewed a beer with Collision Bend, in case you didn't know.
So, while I've got the microphone facing your direction, does your audience know that you were a Sam Adams long shot winner?
I don't know. No, they do.
Excellent. Because that's a story I love to hear all the time.
Yeah.
So if you're telling stories, go ahead.
Oh, we're running short on time. I gotta burn through some events here. So we also like to here at Blabbermalt Show. We like to talk about some music events going on. Billy Morris, who is our patriarch here at Audio Bay Studios, he's going to be down at Game On in Avon Lake. That is April 22nd. It's a Saturday. That's up in Avon Lake, Moore Road in Walker. So they're going to be playing a show. And also, Billy organized the Janie Lane Tribute Show, which is down at Temple Live. That is May 20th and 21st. I think it's the same show, but they pay tribute to the late, great warrant singer, Janie Lane. It's a good show. So, if you like 80s rock, go check that out. There's a couple metal shows coming up. The Black Dahlia Murder, Wednesday. That's tomorrow, April 12th, at the Foundry. I'm not in love with the Foundry as a venue, but Black Dahlia Murder, yeah, like a progressive metal, technical metal, very good band. So get down, check them out. August Burns Red, May 2nd at the House of Blues. This is my bag, baby. Yeah, good band. Killswitch Engage is this coming Saturday, which wife's giving me the kibosh on that. Killswitch Engage is probably one of my favorite bands, but we're going to be up in Marblehead, so sorry.
Not going to work.
Not going to work. The Chaos and Carnage Tour, which is Dying Fetus and Suicide Silence, April 19th at the Agora. Yeah, metalcore, hardcore metalcore. Spirit Box, May 6th, down at the Agora. Love Spirit Box. Probably not going to check them out, but then we got to talk about the greatest band of all time.
Of course.
You know who the greatest band of all time is, don't you?
Up the irons, baby.
Hell yeah, Iron Maiden. So I just learned this like at NHC that you were like a huge Iron Maiden fan. When did you get turned on to Iron Maiden?
1982.
Yes.
So
That had to be Number of the Beast.
Yeah, Number of the Beast came out. The first two albums were great, and then basically from Number of the Beast forward, I was buying their albums as they came out.
Yeah.
First tour I saw them, I wasn't even old enough to drive, was Power Slave.
Oh, yeah.
At the old Coliseum. Saw them on Somewhere in Time, saw them on, the next two tours, and, just grew up with that band.
Yeah.
And, Bruce left early 90s, didn't come back until 2001-ish. I kind of fell out during that time. That's when grunge was a little more popular. We were growing up, had other interests at the time. And then recently, within the last 2-3 years, I've completely come back. And, that's pretty much who I listen to most of the time.
Yeah.
Their new stuff, their old stuff, Bruce's solo stuff. Like, that's just, if I want to listen to music, that's what I put on. And it kind of takes me back to, being that age and when music was the biggest thing of, your day. When were you going to go out and buy the next LP? Wait in line at the record den or secondhand LP, whatever your music store of choice was. Physically taking that home and putting it on the turntable and hearing the music was just a rite of passage when we were kids.
Yeah, these kids don't understand. You couldn't look up a band on YouTube or Spotify, whatever. You talk to your friends, they give you a mixtape, a physical thing. You put in a physical thing and played it. Yeah, it was great. I remember my grandmother, it was for a birthday or Christmas, got me 2 records, and she just went to the record store and said, what are kids into? One was The Who Quadrophenia, the other one was Kiss Double Platinum. And I was like, yeah, The Who is pretty good, but Kiss, I am into this.
Double Platinum was the first album I ever owned as a child.
Oh, yeah.
7 years old.
Yeah.
My parents bought me Double Platinum.
That's great.
Yeah.
God
Grew up with
bless 'em.
Kiss. Absolutely.
Yeah. So then, you just evolve from there and, you get your hard-earned allowance money. You go down to the Music Land in the mall, and I see Number of the Beast, that artwork, iconic artwork, and you're like, what's this all about? Oh, and it was over. I was like, this is for me.
Yep.
Yeah, it was over. So I looked this up. I looked the show up. I saw Iron Maiden for the first time. Oh, where is it? This is great radio. Tuesday, May 18th, 1982 at the Toledo Sports Arena.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That was great. Great times. Anyway, Iron Maiden. Best band of all time.
Listen to him on the way here. I'm going to listen to him on the way home.
Yeah, that's right. All right, hit the grain out.
It's time to grain out. Grain out.
Yeah, so it's going to be a great weather this weekend. So we're probably going to be up at Marblehead, probably get up to Twin Oast. They're releasing their Rutherford B. Hazy IPA, which is a good beer, but they have another one, a session hazy, the Gallivanter. I'm sorry. So I'm interested to check that one out. So get out and support your local brewery. Get out on the patio and have some beers. I'm going to try to get Matthias to bring us some of that cold IPA for the next show. Our guest is to be determined. We have a couple people we're talking to get on for the next show. Email your questions to blabbermalt@gmail.com. Hit us up on Facebook and YouTube at The Blabbermalt Show and at Blabbermalt at Instagram and Twitter. And having said that, we're going to stay malty, Cleveland. Cheers.